Okay, we are live. I'm going to give people a few more minutes to come in. Um, while we're waiting, though, I can quickly say hi. So I'm Zach. I'm the founder and CEO of Warp, and I have my dad here today, Jeff, who I'm not sure if he knows exactly what Warp is or Warp does, but he's going to be my co-host on this version of Code with Zach. So we'll wait a couple minutes here before we get started. I can see people are still filtering in. But Dad, you want to say hi really quickly while people come in?
Sure. Good morning. I'm the founder and CEO of Zach, and I am honored to be a part of this today. I know very little about Warp, even less about what we're doing this morning, so this is going to be very interesting.
Cool. Well, I'm excited. I hope that by the time we finish this session, you have some idea of what I do and what's possible today for people who are writing code and doing software development. I think we're going to show some cool stuff. Again, I'll give us maybe 1 or 2 more minutes as people filter in, and then I'm going to go ahead and get started. I am in New Mexico. My dad is in California, and I see we have like people coming in from all over the world, which is pretty cool to see.
Wow, that is.
Dad, did you have a good Father's Day?
Wow, it was wonderful. Thank you. We were up and visiting our kids up in Seattle, your sister and nephews, and it was terrific. It could not have been better. How about you?
It was great. It was great. We went swimming. It's been very nice here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and officially kick us off and talk about what we're going to be doing today. So this is Code with Zach. The idea behind Code with Zach is I try to show how I use like the newest generation of AI coding tools to build something. Specifically, I try to use like the agentic coding tools, and today I'm going to be using Warp, which makes sense because that's what I work on. But I hope that a lot of what I show is useful for whatever tool of choice you are all using. Here's what we're going to build today. So we are going to build a new feature into Warp itself. This feature is going to be called Dad Mode. And the idea behind Dad Mode is that if you turn on Dad Mode in Warp, you're going to get a few cool things that I think the dads in the world might like. So one, we're going to make the text a little bit bigger so you can see Warp more easily. We're going to build an MCP server that lets you get sports scores. So if you're doing your terminal work and you want to know what's going on, in the golf tournament, you can just ask AI and it will give you the latest golf scores. And then I thought it'd be fun to make it so that every time you open a new session in Warp, you get an LLM generated dad joke. So this is what Dad Mode is going to be in Warp. I'm going to share my screen and get into it. This should be fun. One thing that I wanted to do today that I thought would be cool was to build something on a real existing code base. So if people have joined these in the past, I've largely done it on 0 to 1 projects, which I think are easier for these agentic tools. But the tools, like if you asked me to do this demo a month ago, I don't know that it would have worked. I think it's going to work in Warp today on a real code base. And Warp, just so people get it, is over 1 million lines of Rust code. So this is like doing some stuff on real code. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Want to show again just like what we're building. So we are building Dad Mode, which is a setting toggle, and large text for easy reading, sports scores, MCP server, and an LM generated dad joke in every new session. I also thought it'd be cool to do a bunch of things, so I can show you how I use Warp to do things in parallel. Dad, are you able to see this slide in my desktop just so I can confirm people see it?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, cool.
All good.
All right. All right. Can you see Warp?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. So this is Warp. And again, if anyone joining isn't familiar with Warp, Warp is a today it's an intelligent terminal, but it's a terminal that does way more than what your standard terminal does. It's really what I think of as like an agentic development environment at this point, meaning that you can either type commands in Warp, so I'll type some commands, or you can just ask the LLM to do things for you, and it will do them, and you can do multiple things in parallel. So here's my my agenda for dad mode. The first thing that I think we want to do, and I want to show how I would build, is I think dad mode probably isn't for everyone. It needs to be behind a setting. And so I'm going to build a new one of these like toggle settings that goes in here on our settings page that enables or disables dad mode. And so to help the AI do this, I'm going to actually start by just taking a screenshot of this area here. And then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a new branch. We'll call this dad mode 2. I did this earlier. Get checkout. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and attach that image that I just took as context here. So I'll go over to my desktop, I'll find it. And then for a lot of this demo, I'm just going to talk to Warp. I find it much more efficient to tell Warp the prompts I want than to type them. It's going to save you from watching me type. So I'm going to go ahead and describe the task that I want. So I'm going to say, I want to add a new feature in Warp that is a setting, and it's going to be called dad mode. Yeah, got the quotes right. The dad mode setting should be the last setting in the general section in our settings page. You can see what the settings look like in the attached screenshot. Before writing any code, I'd like you to find the code in our code base where these settings are defined and tell me how you might implement a new Boolean toggle setting for dad mode. Let me review the code before we make any changes. So a couple things here that I think is useful as folks work with these agentic tools. I always like to break what I'm doing into smaller pieces. And what I strongly advise against at this point is trying, if you're working on a big code base, to zero shot or one shot a large change. Dad, do you have any idea what I'm doing? Let me stop here.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
Okay. So this is Warp, by the way, Dad. So does what Warp is make sense to you? You can say no.
This is amazing. I'm just watching this now. It's terrific.
Okay. I'm glad you like it. So Warp, Dad, it's a tool that developers use. They use it to do all kinds of things, but it's basically like they use it to build software in a very, very general sense. And this is a particular tool that developers use called a terminal, where the primary way of interacting with it is by typing text and getting responses. And what's changed in the world is that you can now type English, essentially. You don't have to type code or commands in order to interact with it, which is really, really powerful in terms of making it easier for people to do their work. So, okay, so let's just go ahead and see what we got here. So I want to show what's going on here. So I started with this prompt. The next thing that happened, and this will be true probably in a lot of coding tools, but Warp has gotten way more powerful with this recently, is that it will search, it'll do a code-based search. And this is using code-based context. So this is using a like vector embedding model of our internal repo here to find the settings. It's finding that specific settings page. It shows the general section. And then it's learning that. And then it did what I asked it to do here, which is like I asked it to explain the code structure and not actually write anything. And this is right. So the way that we define settings is we have this macro for settings. It found the right part of the features page. And notice I didn't tell it that this was in the features page, just to remember where this is, features. I just showed it this general thing and it found the right place. This looks correct to me. So it's following the pattern here. It's also creating the ability for me to search for this setting, which is pretty cool. This looks correct to me. So, broadly speaking, and so I'm going to go ahead and ask it to build it for me. Let me see, yes, this looks correct. Please go ahead and make this code change for me. Once you've made it, I'd like to see a summary of what you've done. Okay, so this is going to keep going. So Dad, just so you get it, this is what it's doing here is it's generating computer code that is going to eventually let me, when I rerun Warp, you're going to see this new setting in here that says dad mode, if it works correctly. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. And by the way, if folks are asking questions in the chat, I don't think my dad's going to answer them. I think someone from Warp team should be answering them. Okay, so you'll see that it's going to go ahead and start this coding task. I think while it's starting this coding task, because this might take a minute or two, I'm going to go ahead and start on a second thing that I know that I can do in parallel. And I do think this is how developers are going to be doing work more and more frequently, is you have one thing that's kind of running over here, and in Warp I can keep track of how it's running. And then I'm going to go ahead and start on a second thing, which is independent. So for this second thing, what I want to do is create an MCP server that fetches the latest scores. But in order to fetch the latest scores, I need some API that's going to provide this. I did a little research beforehand. I know that ESPN has an API. Let's go ahead and explore that API before I have Warp create an MCP server for me. So I'm going to go ahead and tell Agent Mode to do that. I'm going to be like, could you use the ESPN public API for getting sports scores and create a curl request for showing me all of the baseball games that are going on today. So I'm going to just start this. And this is I think how I would, if I were doing this without AI, I would also, hold on. Sorry, my bad. I already have this MCP server running. Let me delete it because I built this yesterday. So I'm going to go in here. So it was already trying to do this. I'm going to delete this because I want to start from scratch on this. So this is Warp's MCP area. This is what we're going to be building. I forgot to clear the state from the demo. So let's try this again. So I'm going to hit up arrow. I'm going to rerun this query. Hopefully now it will not try to use MCP if things are working properly. And in the meantime, while this is generating, let's just go over here and see what's going on. So we have started generating code. Now I have Warp in a mode right now where I let it create diffs for me. And that diffs, so diffs are just think of it as new sections of code. Does that make sense? You can say no.
No.
Feel free, Dad, ask me questions, what's going on. I'm happy to talk about it. So this is creating code for me in the background. And this code generally looks right. It was previewed to me before it did it, so I have a feeling it's going to be right. And then it's added all this code, and now it's smart enough to know hey, this is a Rust project. I'm going to go ahead and run cargo check. And one nice thing about Warp's version of this is I can click in and see the build process because Warp's an awesome terminal, and so I can see what's going on here. Now I'm going to switch back over here and get this MCP project going. MCP, by the way, sorry for throwing out acronyms in case folks aren't familiar, it stands for Model Context Protocol. It's a way of adding external information and making it accessible to an LLM. So we're going to build the ability to ask the LLM about sports scores, basically. So this worked. I got today's games. You can, if you want to drill in and see the curl request, you can do that. Or you can just look at the summary that I got from the LLM. Okay, so I have this curl endpoint here. The next thing that I'm going to do is go ahead and set up MCP. So I'm gonna scaffold this project. I'm going to ask Warp to do it. could you create a new TypeScript MCP project in the current directory with a Git repo that is for fetching scores from the ESPN API? I would like it to be able to have a tool call that lets you specify the sport and then gives you sports scores for the current day. Please tell me how you would set this up before writing any code. So Dad, I'm just talking to my computer here, as you can see, and I'm asking it to do things for me. And the thing that I'm asking it to do is to create this app for me, basically. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. I'm going to let this run for a second because it's going to think. Again, there's more latency when you work with these agentic things. So I do think you tend to want to do things in parallel. And then I'm going to go over here, and it looks like we have compiled this. So I'm going to go ahead and run this, which is going to run a development version of Warp. And you can see I got a notification over here that this needs my attention. Interesting. So it wants to use another MCP server that I have. And let's see. I'm actually going to turn off the GitHub MCP server. I don't find that one as useful as just using, why is it using that one? I don't see that one running. Well, let me let this continue. Sorry. Please continue. I'll put this in agent mode. Let's see what's going on over here. So this is building. Okay, and here is it telling me what the project structure is going to be. So let's read this. So this is like a plan. I think it's useful always if you're gonna do something new. So it's gonna do this in TypeScript, which is what I wanted. It's gonna use the MCP TypeScript SDK, which is also what I want. Sorry, this popped up. I'll return to this in a second. It's going to do the build scripts. It's going to make a client file, types file, utilities file, the one tool, which I asked for, sport. Oh, league, interesting. And date, that's fine. I didn't ask for that, but that makes sense. And it's going to use this public API from ESPN. I'm going to be like, this looks great. Yes, this looks great. Please go ahead and set up the MCP server for me according to this plan. Okay, so I'm now going to go here and look at this version of Warp, and we'll see if this works. So remember, this is where I asked over here Warp to build this settings toggle for me. So let's go ahead and see if it did it. So I'll go ahead and settings. And if I go down to features, amazing. So we have a new feature. Does this make sense now, Dad?
Yeah, that's cool. That's
okay, so now we have this new feature in Warp. It's exactly where I asked for it to be. To me, this is just like mind-boggling. It's so cool. It wasn't possible. I can toggle it off and on. Let's see if I search for it. I can search for it. I get dad mode. So Warp did an amazing job implementing just the first part of this, which is this dad mode toggle. So now I want to continue with the next thing, if you remember, which is this large text. And so this is chugging over here, this MCP server. I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to be like, you know what? This is a good spot to record my work. So I'm going to ask. I have a saved workflow that I do to make a checkpoint here with a good commit message for what I'm doing, just so I can go back to this point if I need to. So I'm going to ask agent mode to do that. Again, I'm using a feature here of Warp, which I think is super cool, which is that we have these things called saved prompts, which you can use or you can share across a team, which is also useful. The one that I just used may have been in my personal area. It's a commit and push open changes with a good commit message. And so this causes agent mode in Warp to read what I did, come up with a nice commit message for me, and push it to origin so that I have a record of it. So this should be in a good spot in a second here. Let's go ahead and see what's going on in the MCP server land. So it's doing its thing here. So package.json, TypeScript. So this is running. Okay, I got a notification that this one is done. So I'm going to go back over here. And now I'm going to add this large text. This is going to be a trickier one. Our UI is not really set up super well for this. So if there are any Warp users, that this is actually a feature request that that people want. We don't really have this, but I'm going to try and do it anyways. So I'm going to be like, I want to create a new feature where if the DAD mode setting is enabled, all of the UI text in Warp is bigger than it would normally be. I think you're going to need to look in the following files to understand how to do this. And I'm going to give it a hint here. So I'm going to hit at. I know that probably that it needs to look in appearance, I'm guessing, and probably in the general settings. Most of the, actually, I'm trying to think what the right prompt is here. So I'm going to stop for a second. I'm going to say, I believe that the UI font size is typically read from appearance. So we will want to do something where if DAD mode is enabled as a general setting, then the font size is maybe 1.5 times bigger than it normally would be. Do not change colors do not change the method signature for getting the font size if we can avoid it. Instead, keep all of the state internal to appearance and have that listen for and understand if the DAD mode setting is enabled and whether it's changed. So one thing I want to call out here is, like, if you're working with these agentic tools, I feel like it's very important to tell them not just what you want done, but how you want them to do it. If you're, especially if you're working on a production code base, where there's a lot of code and there's engineering standards, and you don't want to create like a mess of stuff that's totally unmaintainable or not composable. So, because otherwise these tools will sort of goal seek until they get something that like kind of has the outcome that you want, but might not be done in the way that you want. Please show me a preview of your plan before actually making this change. And by the way, if folks are seeing that my version of Warp looks slightly different than yours, it's because I'm using what's essentially on our preview build, which has some really nice features and has a new sort of way of doing input in Warp and also seeing what's running in Warp. Okay, so this is still going over here. It's checking the curl command again, which is right. So I'm going to let this cook. I'm going to let this cook over here. And then I'm going to do one more thing. So I'm going to do something on our server here, which, if you remember, the third thing that I want to try and do is a new dad joke every time a session starts from an LLM. So I'm going to try to do a server change here where we're not going to check this in if any Warp person is watching and worried, but where I alter our server to be able to return LLM generated dad jokes. And so this should be fun to do. Our server is written in Go, so it's a totally different language, totally different repo and code base. So let's try and do this. So I'm going to start this over here with another prompt. I want to add a new GraphQL endpoint that returns a dad joke. It should return a different dad joke every time, if possible. So there should be a little bit of randomness in the response. It does not need to be behind authentication. It can be a public endpoint. It should use a relatively inexpensive LLM model for doing this. I will run using script/server so that all of our proper API keys and environment variables can be read from the environment. Please give me a preview of the change that you expect to make. Dad, any questions on what's going on here?
Will there be a new joke every time you activate the dad mode, or will it be on a daily basis? How do you do that?
Great question. So what I want to do is make a new dad joke show up every time you start one of these new sessions. And so to show you what that could look like, just so how I'm going to do that, I'm going to make a change to a shell script that calls this LLM. So I'll just do one that shows you the new date every time you start a session. So I'll just, as a sample, I'll be like, could you update my .zshrc file to print out the current date and a welcome message that says, "Hi, Dad," every time I start a new session? So we'll let this go too. This is still thinking. This is done. So let's go back and look at this one for a second. So this is the one changing the font size. So let's read what it wants to do. 1.5x larger when dad mode is enabled. Handle scaling internally within the appearance struct. Okay. Dad mode font multiplier. Just reading this, making sure it seems reasonable. This seems fine to me. I want to know, like, how many files do you think that you, oh, it already says it. It says which ones it's going to need to. Yeah. Yes, let's go ahead and proceed with this change. After you've made the change, I want to see the code blocks one by one that you've edited and added. Now, I tell it to do that. You can also add like a rule so that it will always kind of do that for you. Like, and you can also, depending on like how much you trust Warp, you can control how much autonomy you give it. So you can control if you allow it to always apply code diffs, read files. You could have it use a reasoning model to create plans. I actually don't find this to be that effective, so I don't do it. But some people like that mode. You can prevent it from running certain commands and have it run certain MCP servers, etc. So let's go over here now. So this, if folks recall, this was the MCP server. So this is saying that we have an MCP server. So I'm going to go ahead and see if this MCP server works. So I'm going to ask Agent Mode how to hook this up. I'll be like, what's the JSON configuration to add to start this MCP server? Let's see how this is looking. Okay. Actually, let's go over here for a second. So did it do this? There it is. So Dad, this is what it's going to look like when I start a new session. It's going to print out, instead of the printing out "Hi, Dad," I want it to print out a dad joke. Why not? So we'll leave that over here. Okay, I have a bunch of things going on here. I just need to get my head straight. So yep. So let's see. MCP client. This seems right. So I want this. I'm not going to do it in Cloud Desktop. I'm going to do it in Warp. npm start. Yeah. So this looks correct. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this. And we'll see. We're going to go over here. So in Warp, MCP servers are in Warp Drive. I'm going to add a new one. I'm going to go ahead and paste this. I'm going to save it, and we got an error. Let me see why. I think because we call this working directory, we don't accept CWD, but we probably should, to be honest. So let me grab this again because I need this string here. And if I wanted to debug, I could debug. I got it running now. I can see the logs if I want to see it. So it looks like this is running MCP server. So I'm going to close this. Okay, now we can test if this is working. I'm going to ask if the MCP server is working. I'm just going to be able to ask for scores. So I'll be like, again, let's see like what other sports are going on right now. I actually don't even know. I'll do baseball because I think it's going on today. Games are. So we'll see if this is able to actually use MCP to get the result. Thinking. Yep. So it's calling this MCP tool. This is so cool. Sports score. So, okay. Part one of this, one part of this is now done, which is like I now have an MCP where as a dad, I can ask about today's sports scores, which, come on, that's pretty cool. Let's go over here and get the dad joke LLM going for a second. So I want to read this before I actually have it do anything. So it's going to create something in my GraphQL schema, which seems right to me. It's going to make a resolver for it. Which is going to, I believe, correctly make a call here to our LLM. It's going to use Gemini 2 Flash, which is fine. So this is Go code for folks who aren't familiar. And this is like basically following the pattern in our server for doing this. So this one, I don't know if it's going to work. We're going to try it. I'm going to be like, yes, go ahead and implement these changes, please. Okay, let's see what's going on over here. So if you recall, this is the font size one. We can go through and see what's going on here. So we have a font size multiplier. It's multiplying it. This is cool. This looks right. One of the things I think that we're going to need in products like this is like a really, really good way of reviewing the code that is being written by the AI. This is like, I think we have a decent version of this in Warp right now where you can sort of see all of these. But what I really want to see as this is going is like, hey, show me a running like log of all the changes and let me sort of code review them. Okay, so let's see what's going on here. So it seems like it now compiles. It's making a commit for me, which is fine. And now it's summarizing the code changes, which is what I asked it to do. Okay. Let's see what happens here. This is exactly what I want to see, is like an explanation of what it did. I'm going to run this and we'll see. I'm not positive if it's going to work or not, which is kind of the name of the game when working with these tools. But this is, by the way, like if I were doing this, I don't know, I'd have to look probably a little bit more closely to make sure this is exactly how I would do it. I don't want this sort of my preset script. But since I sort of told it the structure in general of like, hey, here's how I want you to make this change. Oops. It I think basically followed what I suggested. And so one point I want to make is like, if you're working with these tools, I don't think it relieves you of the duty as an engineer. Duty is strong word. Like you want to engineer with them. You want to use them to multiply yourself as an engineer, not to like substitute for your engineering know-how. And so I know this code base fairly well because I helped write a bunch of it. And so I kind of know what I have to do. If this were an unfamiliar code base, what I would first do is I would spend a bunch of time working with agent mode to understand how to properly build this change. I might even have it like suggest a few ways of building the change and see which one makes the most sense. What I wouldn't do is just like be like, make the change for me. I think that that's like where people get into problems using these tools. So let's go back here. Okay, so let's go ahead. Here's the welcome, Dad. I'm going to go ahead and go into settings, and we will see if this worked or not. It's under features. Here's Dad mode. Yeah, it worked. So take a look at, it isn't changing these. These are controlled by some different font size thing, but take a look at all the tabs and all the other UI fonts change as I turn on and off Dad mode. Dad, does this make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Totally.
So this is pretty cool. I think there's still some more work to do to get it to actually do all of the text. I'd have to sort of debug what's going on, why it's not doing that. But this is still pretty good. So I'm going to say that this one is done as well. We have large text. And then the final thing that we need here is, can we get a dad joke? And so this is chugging over here. I don't know if this has gone off the rails or what. It's looking at more files than I would like it to be looking at. So let's go back and just sort of see what it's been doing. So GraphQL schema looks fine. I looked at that before. API endpoint, that looks fine. It's probably doing more than I want here. Okay, it's looking at it's trying to understand error handling. One thing I'm worried about is like these generated files are pretty big. Like if I were to open this, and by the way, this is a new thing. You can just look at these files directly in Warp. I'm worried a little that this is filling up my context window with a bunch of stuff that isn't needed. And it's doing this for a lot of files. And one of the big failure modes that I found using these agentic coding tools is that if you fill up the context window, they can start to forget what they're trying to do. They can go in circles. So let's see if it's able to fix itself here. It's still going, but it's making me start to be somewhat concerned based on the amount of code that it's reading here. If anyone on Warp is watching. Let's see though, I'm gonna let it go. So it's still creating a diff. Let's see. Dad, what else is going on with you while we're waiting for this thing to do my coding?
I was curious. You input everything by talking to it. Is it in there? Say you don't speak English. How do you program all of this?
That's a awesome question. So I guess there's a couple things. So we use something called Whisperflow to do the voice transcription, and I'm not sure because I never really learned another language. I'm not sure if it supports other languages or not. I do think that the LLM will support other languages decently well. If you want to tell me something, we can test that. You speak Spanish, right? What's a good question to type in Spanish?
You can ask it. ¿Quién ganó el juego de
baseball? I don't know how to spell that. How do I spell it?
Who won the baseball game, the Dodger game last night in Spanish?
I don't know how to just write that in Spanish.
Okay, it's ¿Quién? Q-U-R-E-N.
Yeah.
Ganó, G-A-N-O. El juego, J-U-E-G-O, de baseball. Anoche, Los Dodgers.
Anoche,
something like that.
Let's see if it can handle this. I don't know if it can or not. This will be.
I just was curious.
Yeah, there you go.
So there you go.
If you talk to it in Spanish,
that's cool.
It's really cool. I don't know if that would work with the transcription or not. I kind of suspect it wouldn't. But it might. But it definitely will work if you type to it, which is. This is not something that we had to specifically build or support. This is supported by the underlying model that we're using.
How proficient in Warp do you have to be to do what you just demonstrated? I mean, this is, I mean, you know it inside and out. If someone is just getting started with this, how do they? I mean, this seems incredibly powerful, but to use it.
Yeah, so Warp is, the primary audience that we've built Warp for, from the beginning, has been professional developers. I do find that more and more people who are using Warp actually don't have much development experience. And because you can sort of just like talk to it in English, you are able to, you're able to have it do things for you, or hopefully have it like teach you how to do things that you wouldn't know how to do. So it is pretty cool. And then I think it lowers the barrier of entry for people who want to get started doing programming or development. We have a lot of people who use Warp to do sort of like hobby projects or like set up their like home networks. We have people who do system administration in it. And so it's actually a much easier to use than the old version of this tool. And so like the old version of this tool is something that kind of looks like this, which what am I doing? Like doesn't speak English to you. It just speaks command. So this older version is much harder to use, even though you're right. I am doing some stuff here in Warp that I think is like, I'm only able to do it because I've been a developer for a really long time now, and I know Warp's code base. And so, you know, I do have that advantage of having experience, but the sort of barrier to entry is getting lower. So I think that over here, I'm a little bit worried that we are getting into a mode of like circling, which is one of the error modes here, but it may fix itself. And for people in here who use Warp, this is one of the things that we're working on fixing. It's not trivial to fix, of like, how do you get it to do these types of interactions more efficiently? Because in addition to taking a long time, this is also probably pretty costly. And I think that the LLM is doing too much right now. But let me see all the stuff that's been going on here. So it's like getting there, which is cool to see. Just looking at all this code over here. Yeah, this is where I really would like a nice diff viewer in Warp. Let's see how we're doing here. So what's it running? So one of the cool things about Warp, by the way, is you get this interface of like, you can have in one pane here, you can have the agent doing something. In another pane, you can be looking at its output. Okay, so we're getting there. So now it's actually regenerated correctly all of the GraphQL, and now it's compiling. So I think we're maybe close on this one. Okay, it's going to go ahead and make a commit. I think I'm close to being able to run the server and see if this worked. So made a commit. Again, this is something you can configure. I have it configured to do commits for me. But if you're using Warp and you might not want this behavior, that's fine too. So, and now it's going to give me a summary of everything that it did, which is cool. I'm going to go ahead and close this pane. Look at this. And here we go. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and say, I'm going to run this server in another session, and then I'd like to check the output using GraphIQL. Can you give me the correct GraphIQL query in order to determine if this is working? So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to go over here. I'm going to run this server over here. Again, it's cool to be in the terminal for doing this, so I can just go ahead and run our server. And in the meantime, so the server is starting. And let's see what we got. All right, so this is running. And then once we have this, so let me go ahead and copy this graph. By the way, if anyone came to the earlier Code with Zach's, I hope folks are, I'm like pretty blown away by how far this has come. It's just gotten vastly, like this wouldn't have worked not that long ago. What's the GraphIQL? Did you print it out? Did it give me the URL? I need that. What's the GraphIQL URL? It's gotten so much better. Some of it is model improvements. A lot of it is Warp improvements. So if folks did try this in the past, I highly encourage you to try it again. Like the underlying technology has gotten so much better. Both, yeah, like I said, at the Warp level and at the model level. Okay. It's thinking about it. It's going to try and answer this question for me. I should really know this. It's reading my README to try to figure this out. Now it's actually looking in the code. It's like, what is this? We're going to be able to figure this out quickly. Okay, so this is what I wanted. We're going to go over to the V2 one, which I think is what this was built in. So I'm going to copy this. I'm using this fancy new Dia browser, which is pretty cool. Go over here, copy this again. Oh, I shouldn't be doing this on staging. I should be doing this on, yeah, this should be on localhost. Yep, there we go. So I have GraphQL, which is, for folks not familiar with GraphQL, this is a kind of like test harness for it. Let's go ahead and run this. And did I paste this in wrong or did it just not work? Didn't work, but and pretty soon I'm going to stop because I want to give people time to answer questions. But I'm going to say like I got this error. There is a way to hook up MCP in order to do this debug loop. I don't have it set up right now, but let's go ahead and see if it can fix this. And if not, I'm going to go ahead and actually sort of pause to answer questions at the end because I wanted to leave some Q&A time at the end of this session. I think I might as well go ahead and do that. But this is close to working. I think it's a lot of progress here. I'm going to go back over to the stream. I am going to stop sharing. And then I'm going to try and do Q&A. So I don't know if anyone from Warp wants to hop in and join, or if there are themes here. Okay, I see some themes from Q&A, which is like, so I see one question. I'm just going to do my best to answer these questions as they come in here. So one question I see is like, am I less of a developer if I use Warp? It feels like I'm trading off my actual skill for development. So it's a great question. There is like a real risk with these tools that developer skills atrophy, or that you don't learn how to do the actual development. And I've had people on our team say this to me. And so like, I think the proper way to view this is like as a new discipline of software engineering, honestly, where if you're going to be a great software engineer in the next 5 years, I think you're going to have to pick up the skill of like, how do I effectively sort of guide agents to help me do my work? Now, what I find is that when I'm working on a real code base like Warp, I have to tell it how to do things. Otherwise, I'm just going to waste a ton of time. And so in the ideal scenario, what it's actually doing is like, you have to become a higher level thinker. Like you have to move your mind up one level of abstraction and be able to think like, okay, this is the right way to have it build the right components for me, where I'm going to save a whole bunch of time typing. Like typing is not a good use of my time as an engineer, but I'm still going to do the hard work of thinking and being like, this is how all the pieces of this should fit together. This is what the API should look like. So I think you have to really make an effort to do that. I'll share one other thing with the group here that I think is pretty cool, which is I'll share the guidelines that we use at Warp when we're using this technology. So I just put it in the chat here. I hope this shows up on YouTube. But these are guidelines that we have to make sure that we're still doing real engineering. I'm gonna take more questions because I see a whole bunch of them in the chat. I'll try to get to as many of these as I can. I see, how do you think about Warp versus Claude Code? So Claude Code is really cool. Claude Code, I think, has the most similar form factor to what we are doing at Warp, in that the primary interface in Claude Code is you are prompting. And then, Claude Code, for people who haven't tried it, it's a terminal app. So it's a CLI apps. Like within Warp, you run Claude and then you ask Claude to do things. It's really good, but there's a big advantage to doing things in Warp rather than doing things in Claude, which is like, you get the advantage of not being limited by being a terminal app. And so what I mean by that is like, you get really nice UX around being able to edit code natively in Warp. Like Claude Code, you can't edit it all. You get the ability to follow the multitasking. You get the ability to seamlessly interleave terminal and non-terminal stuff. And so and Warp can run AI within like long-running terminal apps. And so there's a whole bunch of advantages on the UX side that I think makes Warp a more approachable and more powerful interface for doing like the agentic workflows. But I find Claude Code very cool, and it's cool to me that it's gaining traction. It really proves that this model of like you tell your computer what you want it to do and you work with it to do it is really catching on. I see more questions. I'm just trying to answer them. So let's see, what's a good one here? So Whisperflow, I see a couple questions. So Whisperflow has an API. It's a great product. First of all, like highly recommend it. Like we know them, the people working on it. Awesome product. If you are someone who is building an app, they have an API where you can, you have to on your side integrate with all of like the microphone and system stuff for gathering the voice data locally, and then you can call over with that data and it will do a transcription for you. So it's cool. What made us bump up credits? So we bumped up credits because we found that people were having bad experiences where they signed up for paid plans and they started to really, really get into using Warp, which is what we want. And they were doing all sorts of amazing stuff with it. And then, a few days into their plan, they're hitting a limit and it was causing people to churn. And we're just like, that sucks. And so we wanted to keep the customers around. It does cost us more money, like without question. And just so folks get it, like we're still trying to figure out the right way to monetize, to price Warp. But we also feel like we have a lot of work internally to do to make the usage of the requests and tokens more efficient. And so rather than make our users like totally wait for us to do that work, we wanted to just help people get more done with Warp right now. Looking for other questions. I see one, do I more often type or speak to my laptop? It depends a little bit like where I am. In public, it's a little bit weird for me to like, if I'm like on an airplane or whatever, I'm going to type. But if I'm in my home office here, I'm just going to talk because I don't like typing long English paragraphs into my computer telling it what to do. So let's see what else. I want to see. Yeah, I see a lot of people using Warp to do stuff that's not coding. And by the way, that's amazing. Like that's another huge advantage of just being the terminal. Like you can do stuff with FFmpeg. You can do stuff with your home network. You can SSH. You can do stuff with production, like in Kubernetes and Docker. So what's really cool is the flexibility. It's like a very general purpose tool for telling your computer what to do. Dad, any questions from you?
No, I mean, I was just looking at the questions and the comments, and the only thing I can say is I'm very impressed you were able to do this live without a safety net, and literally, you got there. It was terrific.
Yeah. This was, I think, actually the smoothest one that I've done. The last one that I did was hilarious. I was at a friend's house because the power was out at our house, and his dog kept climbing on the table and climbing in front of the camera. It was funny. What is Whisper? Whisper is the technology that I was using to do voice to text. Yeah, it's really, really good. This was definitely our smoothest one so far. Any other questions? Otherwise, I think we're at actually like a pretty good spot to wrap up here. And I really appreciate everyone who stuck around. I would love feedback on this. I think we're going to give a promo code at the end of this, there's a cool code here. We're going to paste it. If you want to get, I don't actually know what you get. It's a month of free Warp Pro. The code is Code with Dad. Would love for you all to try Warp. Would love feedback. You can join our Discord. Really, if people are interested, the best version of Warp to try right now is our preview version. You can come into our Slack and talk to us there. And I'm going to try to get I'm going to try to get my dad using Warp. Maybe my dad will be the one running the next.
Good luck.
Good luck on that. I think I covered everything I want to get to right now. So everybody have an amazing day, and I really appreciate you all taking the time, and thank you, Dad. This was awesome.
Thank you, Zach.
Okay, bye everyone.